Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to answer the question, why are there so many words in the English language? So first things first, let's talk about exactly how many words there are and how large the English language is compared to other languages around the world. The Oxford English Dictionary defines about 600,000 English words, with new words being added every year. Does this mean English is the largest language in the world? Well, probably yes. But it's really not that simple to answer. The truth is, depending on how you define what is a word and what is not a word, the answer can vary. For example, if we look at the Italian word avere, this is an irregular verb in Italian, which means to have. But there are around 50 different ways to conjugate this verb. So do you count it once or 50 times when you're counting the number of words in Italian? For this reason, among others, it's tough to say with 100% certainty that English has the most words of any language in the world. But most experts would probably agree that it does. As far as how English ranks compared to some of the other most popular languages, let's look at the next four most spoken languages on Earth after English. According to the Hanyu Dacidian, also known as the Grand Chinese Dictionary, Mandarin contains about 370,000 words, although modern Mandarin is considered to have only 100,000 words. The Hindi Wiktionary states that there are just over 183,000 words in the Hindi language, whereas the Royal Spanish Academy has the number of Spanish words at about 93,000. And finally, the Grand Robert Dictionary of the French language states that there are around 100,000 French words. Each of these languages comes from regions and countries with a history just as dramatic and interesting as English. So why then does English have more words than each of these languages combined? We're going to break this down into three main reasons why the English language became so large: conquests, borrowing, and evolution. Here, in part one of this story, we're going to cover conquests and how they affected the English language. The islands today, known as Great Britain, have a long and turbulent history going back thousands of years. In fact, it is believed the British Isles were first inhabited by human ancestors up to 800,000 years ago. Yet these ancestors were forced to leave on many occasions due to difficult climatic conditions. According to the British Museum, continuous habitation of the British Isles started around 10,000 years ago up until today. We don't know much about the native Britons, and who they were is a topic that is hotly debated even today. However, moving forward to what we do know, among the first inhabitants of the British Isles were the Celtic Britons. The language that was spoken by the Celtic Britons has long faded away into the annals of time, yet several modern languages can claim to have Celtic roots, such as Welsh and Scottish Gaelic. As far as English goes, there are but a few words that remain from the Celts, like tor, which is a small hill, crag, which is a rock face, and broch, which is a badger and believed to be the inspiration behind the modern-day last name of Brooke or Brooks. Truth be told, because of the lack of historical evidence and writings from this era of prehistoric British civilization, it's extremely challenging to quantify just how much of an impact the Celts have had on the English language, but we can be sure that there definitely was an impact. Moving forward in time, the first major historical conquest that left an everlasting impression on the English language was, without a doubt, the Roman conquest of Britain. Beginning in 43 AD and ending in 411 AD, the Roman influence on modern-day Great Britain can be seen in many places. The Romans built the first roads. They built cities, including the creation of London, or Londinium as the Romans called it. They brought Christianity, military forts, stone architecture, aqueducts, coins. The list goes on and on. Of course, one other thing that they brought was their language of Latin. Not only did they bring their spoken language, they brought written language as well. Until then, writing was an unknown idea in the British Isles, but with the arrival of the Romans, a new age of record keeping and historical context began. Today, we can see the huge influence of Latin in the English language with words such as agenda, etc., mundane, obvious, campus, conflict, medicine, number, and many, many more. When the Romans finally left the British Isles around 1,600 years ago, the start of the Anglo-Saxon era soon began. The Anglo-Saxons are responsible for the creation of what is today called Old English, the first formally recognized version of the English language. But where did these people come from? Well, the term Anglo-Saxon refers to two groups of people, the Angles and the Saxons, who successfully conquered the British Isles after the departure of the Romans. Both groups were Germanic tribes originating from what is now modern-day Germany. The language they brought, later known as Old English, is still seen in many modern words that are still in use today. Words for family, such as father, mother, brother, and sister, numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, even basic sentence constructing words such as the and you. In fact, probably the most recognizable word in the English language came from this time also. That is, of course, the word England itself, which translates to land of the Angles. The English language that we speak today is, at its core, a Germanic language. For this reason, other Germanic languages, such as Dutch and Norwegian, are often easier to learn for English speakers because of their similar structure and sounds. At this point in our story of the English language, Old English is composed of Celtic, Roman, and Germanic words. But as time progressed, the language soon became even larger with the Norman conquest of 1066. William the Conqueror was the Duke of Normandy in modern-day France when his armies invaded and conquered England, seizing the country from the Anglo-Saxons and crowning William as the King of England. With the Normans came the introduction of the Norman language, a close relation to modern French. King William and his court spoke in Norman, and official documents were written in Norman. Furthermore, William replaced almost all high-ranking officials in the country with his own Norman-speaking officials. For the next 200 years or so, English was replaced as the written language of England. In its place, a new hybrid language emerged. Historians call this the Anglo-French language. For these reasons, 1066 is considered to be the start date of the second era of the English language, Middle English. Thanks to the Middle English era, there are a vast amount of French words in the English language today, especially in more formal terms that are related to the church, the courts, the government, and the military. A few examples include castle, priest, abbey, duke, dame, sir, court, jury, and of course, once again, many, many more. Believe it or not, about 30% of modern-day English words are actually of French origin, showing just how important the Norman conquest was to the development of English. We have now covered the first two periods of the English language: Old English, from approximately 450 to 1066, and Middle English, from 1066 to about 1500. Which brings us to the end of part one of this story. But it is not the end of the full story. Coming up in part two, we'll cover the final period of English language history, known as Modern English, from 1500 until the present day. See you there.